Lena hated hospitals with a passion. The sharp smell of antiseptic, the echo of hurried footsteps, and the low murmur of patients in pain always made her chest tighten. But tonight, she had no choice. The discomfort had grown unbearable, and no home remedy or whispered prayer could fix it. After pacing her tiny apartment for hours, she finally gathered enough courage to step into the harsh fluorescent lights of the ER. Her steps were small, hesitant, as though she might change her mind and turn back at any moment. She clutched her worn leather bag like a shield, her knuckles pale from gripping it too tightly. At the reception desk, the nurse asked her what brought her in. Lena's voice dropped to almost a whisper, the words stumbling out, an intimate problem, nothing life-threatening, but humiliating enough to set her cheeks aflame. The nurse nodded professionally, scribbling notes, but Lena's stomach twisted with shame. She had never been good at speaking up, especially about herself. Now she wished the earth would swallow her whole. Room 12, the nurse directed gently. Lena obeyed, head bowed, every nerve on edge, unaware that fate was already preparing something far greater than treatment. The sterile quiet of the small exam room made Lena's pulse quicken. She perched on the edge of the paper-covered bed, fingers tangled together in her lap. Her heart thumped with every passing second, the silence broken only by the faint hum of fluorescent lights above. Then the door opened. Dr. Adrian Carter stepped inside with the unhurried confidence of someone who had walked into 1,000 rooms just like this one. But to Lena, his presence felt different, disarming, almost overwhelming. He wore a navy scrub top beneath a white coat, his stethoscope slung casually around his neck. His dark hair was neatly pushed back, and when he looked at her, his eyes were calm yet piercing, the kind of gaze that made her feel both exposed and understood at the same time. Lena. His voice was low, steady, carrying neither judgment nor impatience. She nodded quickly, barely raising her eyes. Her cheeks heated as he glanced at the chart in his hand, then back at her. I understand you're not feeling well, he said gently, pulling up a chair rather than towering over her. Let's start slow. You can tell me as much or as little as you're comfortable with. The kindness in his tone loosened something inside her chest. She had expected cold professionalism, maybe even a hint of impatience. Instead, he seemed to notice her unease immediately and soften his approach. As he asked her questions, he didn't rush. His words were threaded with humor here and there, small attempts to draw her out of her shell. To her surprise, she found herself speaking more than she intended, her voice still quiet but steadier now. By the time he began his examination, Lena realized she wasn't just in the care of a doctor. She was in the presence of someone who saw her as more than her embarrassment. And for the first time that night, she felt a flicker of safety. To Lena, he was simply Drive Carter, a kind-eyed physician who treated her with patience instead of condescension. She couldn't know that the man adjusting the stethoscope around his neck was more than just another ER doctor. Adrian Carter had grown up in privilege. His family name appeared on skyscrapers, charities, and business journals. His father expected him to follow the corporate path, inherit the empire, multiply the fortune, and live the polished life of a man who never had to worry about money. But Adrian had chosen differently. Medicine had always been his quiet rebellion, a way to create meaning in a life where everything else had been handed to him. Saving lives gave him something wealth could not, purpose, yet he never spoke of this to patients. In the he wasn't a millionaire or an heir. He was just a man with steady hands and a calm voice, the one people looked to when they were frightened and vulnerable. What startled him now, though, was how much he noticed her. Most patients blurred into routine, but Lena did not. Her shy manner, the way she avoided his gaze yet hung onto his words, intrigued him. She wasn't trying to impress him. If anything, she wished she could vanish. That quiet honesty pulled at something deep inside him. Adrian caught himself lingering longer than usual, asking one more question, offering one more reassurance. She probably thought he was just being thorough. But already, he found himself wanting to know more than what was written on her chart. The procedure itself was routine, nothing dramatic or complicated. Adrian moved with practiced ease, explaining each step in a calm voice so Lena wouldn't feel left in the dark. Still, her hands stayed clasped tightly in her lap, her nails digging into her palms. Embarrassment lingered in her chest like a heavy stone. But then, something shifted. He began speaking, not about charts or symptoms, but about lighter things. He asked if she read to pass the time, whether she preferred tea or coffee, if she liked city life or quiet escapes. His tone was casual, conversational, like a friend trying to ease her nerves rather than a doctor ticking boxes. At first, her answers were short, clipped, almost whispered. Yet the more he spoke, the easier it became. When he made a dry joke about her vending machines being the real emergency, she surprised herself by letting out a soft laugh. The sound startled her. She hadn't expected to laugh here of all places. Adrian noticed. He stored that laugh away like something rare and valuable. When the treatment was finished, he didn't rush to leave. He checked again that she felt comfortable, lingered just long enough to show it wasn't duty keeping him there but genuine care. "You did well," he said warmly, slipping her prescription onto the counter with discreet professionalism. Then, almost as if debating himself, he added, "And if you'd like, perhaps we could continue our conversation outside the hospital sometime. Maybe dinner." Lena froze. Her mind raced. Had she heard him correctly? A doctor, asking her. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not with such quiet sincerity. Heat crept to her cheeks, and she could only manage a small nod, her voice caught somewhere in her throat. As she gathered her things, her heart was no longer weighed down by shame. Instead, it fluttered with something entirely different, possibility. Dinner with Adrian felt nothing like Lena had imagined it would. She had expected stiff conversation, polite smiles, and the awkwardness of sitting across from a man who surely realized how ordinary she was. Instead, she found herself laughing more than she had in months. He asked questions and actually listened, leaning in with interest, never interrupting. When she stumbled over words, he waited patiently. When she grew flustered, his smile put her at ease. Weeks passed, and their dinners became a quiet ritual. He walked her home, never pushing, never rushing. The more time she spent with him, the more Lena forgot about the sterile exam room where they'd first met. Around him, she felt lighter, braver, even seen. Then one morning, while buying groceries, her eyes landed on a newspaper at the checkout stand. The headline froze her in place. Philanthropist and heir Adrian Carter donates millions to Children's Hospital Wing. There was no mistaking it. The man in the photograph, in a tailored suit with a confident smile, was her Adrian. Her stomach dropped. She shoved the paper aside. But the truth burned in her mind. He wasn't just a doctor. He was wealthy beyond imagination, a man tied to a world she couldn't begin to understand. That evening, she confronted him, her voice trembling. "Why didn't you tell me?" Adrian held her gaze steadily. "Because it doesn't matter. I never wanted you to like me for that. I only wanted you to know me. The man who listened to you, who laughed with you, who cares for you." Lena's breath caught. She wanted to believe him, but fear gnawed at her heart. How could someone like him want someone like her? Yet deep down, she knew he meant every word. And that terrified her even more. The days after Lena learned the truth were a storm of emotions. Every time she thought of Adrian, her chest tightened. She replayed their dinners, their quiet walks, his steady voice in the ER. Nothing about those moments had felt false. And yet, the image from the newspaper haunted her. A man polished, powerful, belonging to a world of glittering galas and million-dollar donations. She was just Lena, shy, reserved, barely able to look people in the eye at times. The thought of standing at his side in that glittering world made her feel impossibly small. When he called, she almost didn't answer. But his voice, gentle, patient, without a hint of demand, broke through her hesitation. "Can we talk?" They met at a quiet cafe on the edge of town, far from the glass towers and flashing cameras that defined his other life. Adrian was already there when she arrived, his suit jacket folded over the chair, sleeves rolled up, looking less like a millionaire and more like the doctor who had once made her laugh about vending machines. "Lena," he began, his voice careful, "I should have told you. Not because my wealth matters, but because you matter, and I don't want you to ever feel deceived." She swallowed hard, twisting her fingers in her lap. "I don't belong in your world, Adrian. I wouldn't know what to say, how to act. People will wonder why you're with me." He leaned forward, his eyes steady on hers. "I don't care what people think. I've spent years surrounded by people who wanted my name, my money, my influence. And then I met you. You weren't trying to impress me, you were just yourself. Do you know how rare that is? Her breath caught. She had never thought of her shyness as something valuable, only as a flaw. Yet here he was, treating it as something precious. Silence stretched between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Finally, Lena whispered, "I'm scared." "So am I," he admitted with a soft smile. But maybe that's what makes it real. Something in his tone, in the raw honesty of his words, broke through her doubt. The tension inside her loosened, and for the first time since discovering the truth, she let herself smile back. When Adrian reached across the table, she let her hand rest in his. His touch was warm, grounding. In that moment, Lena realized she didn't need to fit into his world. He had already stepped into hers. The shy girl who once dreaded walking into an ER had walked straight into something far greater, love. And the man who had everything finally discovered the one thing he had been missing all along.